Good morning. I am Tracy Massey, and I am here to have author conversation with Dr. Felicia George. And the first question is, give us some background information on yourself and how did you become a writer?
Okay. I am a Detroiter, proud to say that. Graduated from Cass Technical High School, went to Wayne State, where I received all three of my degrees in psychology, interdisciplinary studies, and finally made my PhD in anthropology. If you were to say what matters to me, what's most important to me is definitely family. So I think I'm proudest to say that I am the daughter of Rayburn and Barbara, the wife of Anthony, and the mother of Jasmine. So that is pretty much me in a nutshell. How I became a writer is kind of funny. I really, until recently, really didn't see myself as a writer, more so as someone who loved history and who loved doing research and pulling it all together.
There. So, why do you write?
It is it seems like just a natural progression because I love to always say I'm a researcher. I love researching. There's nothing that makes me happier than to get into some old newspapers or some old court documents and really, really kind of relive the past. And so writing kind of seems like the natural end to once you do all that research and you pull that story together, it feels like you have to tell that story. So for me, writing is just the end sum of that. And it just feels good to be able to pull all of the pieces together of a puzzle, put it all together, and then to tell the story.
Fair. So, what is your writing process?
It is really, really straightforward and simple. It goes right back to, and you're going to hear me keep talking about being a researcher, but it's really for me, it's whatever topic or idea comes into my head. I kind of at that point start obsessing and going down rabbit holes. And then once I start really, really researching it and pulling together all the pieces and pulling back all the layers of this onion, for me, the biggest part is finding out how the story connects, how it ties to history. And then once I do all that research, put it all together, then the end part for me is the actual putting it together, telling the story and writing it.
So, do you write every day? Do you have a certain time of day that you like to write?
Yeah, I'm a morning person and I'm my sharpest in the morning. And I always joke and tell everybody, if we have a meeting, I schedule it in the morning because I get dumber as the day progresses. So for me, I do most of my writing in the morning. But what's funny about it, and I don't necessarily write every day. I do say this, I do research every day and I do research all throughout the day. When it pops in my head, that's when I'm going to do it. I probably do my most researching in the evening time, but for some reason, I like to be really, really sharp. And so if I do my writing, it's always going to be first thing in the morning when I'm still sharp. And as I said, I don't write every day. I tend to wait until I have a big part of the story that I'm like, okay, now it's time for me to start pulling this together. And then that's when I'll start writing.
Okay. So, how did you get the ideas for your book?
So this is a story I tell all the time. This was not what I intended to do. So this book actually came from my dissertation that I wrote to get my PhD in anthropology. And I was meeting with my dissertation chair, and I was totally looking at a totally different topic. And I just casually mentioned this to kind of, draw parallels to what it was I thought I was going to do, and just made a just offhand comment. And he really latched onto it. And as I'm trying to pitch what I want to do, he kept circling back around talking about, tell me more about this playing the numbers. Tell me more about this illegal lottery. And as I explained it to him at the end, he said, I'm going to stop you right now. I want you to you don't have to answer now, but I need you to really go home and think about this illegal lottery, this numbers game. I really think that that is your story, a story that needs to be told. And I can see, where you've got a lot of information, just think about it. And so that's what I did. I went home and had a conversation with my husband about it. And I had known about the numbers growing up, but like with a lot of people, you don't realize it's illegal. Adults really don't talk about it in front of you. And so as I started really thinking about that and thinking about the importance it was in the Detroit community and in communities across the country, the idea really began to take hold with me. And I decided, you know what, this is a story I want to tell.
How would you define this work?
It is definitely, I say it's historical anthropology because there's a huge component of it that is history. But that anthropological perspective kind of comes in there. With anthropology, we really pride ourselves on having a holistic perspective, that we're looking at all these different, points of views and all these different systems, and we're bringing it all together to tell a complete story. So for me, I would classify this as a love story, a history story about the city of Detroit with that anthropological twist in it, so that we do have oral histories that are included into this subject.
What are your favorite characters or moments from your book?
I've got a few, but I think the two that I love the most is the time period of the 1940s. When I'm telling a story, the end of the 1930s, beginning of 1940s, and I'm telling the story of John Roxburgh, who is considered the fathers of numbers gambling here in Detroit, and just the work that he did across the city and how he touched the world with, Joe Louis and his part in making Joe Louis Joe Louis. So I really, really love that part of the history of numbers gambling. But then the second part that I really, really enjoyed about the book was the oral history that I did with someone who has the pseudonym Big Will in the book. It was so nice to get a living person who was able to tell this story and their perspective and how it came about. So those are my two favorite moments of the book.
How important do you think the illegal number game was to the city of Detroit and the people of Detroit, and how it benefited some people in a positive manner and was a source of a economic industry?
I can't really put enough emphasis on how important it was for disenfranchised people in the city of Detroit. I want to start off by saying, yes, this was something that was illegal. You're not supposed to be doing it. There have been enough stories that kind of talk about the legality of it, enough stories that talked about, the moral, whether it was morally immoral, whether you're taking advantage of poor people that decide to play the numbers. But this story focuses more on the other side, and that other side is what it brought to the community. If it were not for the pennies, nickels, and dimes that people played with these numbers and the profits that were made from it, there are so many institutions within the city of Detroit that probably would not have blossomed and would not have been built. Because you have to think about the time period where this was really up and very vibrant was during segregation, where banks were not giving money to Blacks for businesses, where if you went to school and you happened to be a person of color, you were not going to find work in your field of accounting or law. And so it filled that gap. It came in and it stepped up as something that was, yes, illegal, and yes, it was part of the underground or informal economy, but it was crucial in the things that it brought to the city of Detroit to fill in that hole that segregation kept Blacks from being able to be truly a part of the whole American dream.
I'm not exactly sure if this has happened in the book, 'cause I've heard your presentation a couple of times. I've purchased the book, but I haven't read the book from cover to cover.
Mhm.
Was the numbers popular in the automotive industry?
Yes, it was huge. And so in the book, I talk about, when the Ford Rouge plant was the plant here in the area, it was very prevalent in the Rouge plant. The story that I talk about all these years later, from the, late 1990s to early 2000s, the story of Big Wheel, that's where he came from. He was the largest numbers man in Pontiac, and he ran his illegal numbers operation out of an automotive plant for a lot of years. And so the plan is just like, think of it as like another community. You think about a lot of times you work and you live with the people where you work from more so than you do family. And so those plants really truly are communities. And so you found this numbers plan in neighborhoods. It wasn't unusual to find it in automotive plants. And to this day, the numbers are still ran in some automotive plants.
What does it mean to have your work selected for Michigan Notable Books?
You know what? It was an amazing honor. And I just have to tell this little story. I really didn't see myself as an author or a writer. For me, this was something that grew out of a dissertation. It was something that grew out of my love of wanting to tell the story, out of the research that I had did on it. And it didn't hit me that, oh my goodness, I am an author, that I really wrote a book that people are interested in, that they want to read, until my book became a Michigan Notable Book. So it was that whole experience that really made me go, oh my goodness, I've accomplished, something that matters. I really am a writer. And so for me, that honor was unbelievable.
Which writers or works have you found yourself most recently reading? That's
So
almost like a guilty pleasure.
Oh, it's so funny. You took the words right out of my mouth. So I am having this whole guilty pleasure right now. I love historical fiction, and there's nothing like finding a very well written historical fiction novel. And if it's about Detroit, that is like an added bonus. And so I am now, and I just love his work. I am reading Donald Levin's Ghosts of Detroit. That's the final book. He has three books, and it's historical fiction. It's set during a time period I love, the 20s to 30s to 40s. And so I'm finally reading that last book that's in the set that he wrote about Detroit, and I am loving every second of it.
Okay, I'm going to have to go back and revisit that. Are you possibly familiar, since you mentioned kind of historical fiction, Sins of Survivors, I think it is.
Yes, yes. So, as luck would have it, this summer, he did a book launch. The author, and his name is eluding me right now. He did a big book launch with Blair Underwood, because Blair Underwood's name is on it, as introducing, by Blair Underwood. And so I was fortunate enough to attend one of the book launches that he had here in the city with the Detroit Historical Club. And I had read the book before the signing, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. So that is actually another very good book.
I thought that was real interesting because it brought a few prominent characters. And
Yes.
as someone who missed the Paradise Valley
Mhm.
period because of my age, it's like I always, if I could get in a time machine and go back to see
Mhm.
Hastings Streets at its heyday, it kind of gave
Mhm.
you that little levity, how they kind of had their hands all over the city of Detroit. And that made me think about your book and the importance of how the numbers basically was a catalyst and a survival tool for those of our persuasion within the community.
You summarized that beautifully, but yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you for the interview. Is there anything else you would like to maybe disclose? Are you working on anything else? Are you still touring with your book?
So yes to both. So yes, I'm still touring with the book. It's funny. I figured, okay, a year later, nobody will, really care, but people still care about it. It is a story that touches a lot of people, and I do not do any kind of author event where not at least one person come up to me and say, "Oh my goodness, my grandmother, my grandfather, my cousin, my neighbor ran the numbers," and the stories are always so rich, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I wish I knew this story when I was originally writing this book, so I could have included it." But I am working on a second book, and the second book is really looking at the history of the criminal justice system here in Detroit, what it meant to be not just a Black police officer navigating through the criminal justice system, but what did it also mean to be a woman? So, looking at both gender and race, and the part that it had in Detroit's evolving criminal justice system. That is what I'm working on now.
I think that will be awesome. And
Thank
just
you.
as I shared with you just before our interview, I found out that my grandmother was a numbers taker. So, as I shared, being one of the youngest of her grandchildren, I wasn't alive when she partake in this endeavor, but I'm going to have to do a little bit more digging to find the root of those stories. But
Yeah,
thank you.
and I bet you when you start digging, you're going to find out some amazing things.
Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to meet with us. And it was a pleasure discussing your book.
No, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for those great questions you had. It always makes me get really excited when people are able to kind of figure out the message I was trying to send with the book. But the questions you asked were amazing. So thank you so very much for having me.